On to something also very strange over the last week, very strange. On the one hand, you've got China's communist dictatorship pretending to now play nice. Now, as far as we're concerned, it's still got all these trade bans on us to bully us into shutting up about freedom and kowtowing and giving it what it wants. But this afternoon, a hint of a breakthrough. Our Trade Minister, Don Farrell, was allowed to talk to China's Commerce Minister for the first time on a video link. And he was even invited to China to further sort things out. That said, China hasn't actually backed down yet on the sanctions against this. So here it's China playing nice. It's not just us, it's doing to a number of countries suddenly. Meanwhile, though, just as China's dictator is supposedly trying to look less threatening, hi guys, you can trust me, China sends a great balloon high over the United States. A weather balloon, says China, a spy balloon, says the United States Secretary of Defense. But for a week, the Biden administration refused to shoot down that balloon, saying, oh, look, it could fall on people. It was finally blown up with a missile over the Atlantic after a week. And the Democrats said, well, this is actually a win-win. It's not even an embarrassing sign of weakness. No, to let it float from one side of the United States to the other. Joining me is the country's top foreign affairs writer, Greg Sheridan of the Australian newspaper. Greg, the United States government says it is a Chinese spy balloon, but it lets it float from one side of the US to the other, saying, well, look, we had a lot of time to, track the signals, see what it was up to. We learned more than they did. But are you buying this? Was it a smart move or a weak one?
Look, Andrew, this is a pathetic answer on my part, but it's a bit hard to say. There are a lot of mysteries about this balloon. Balloons are a very credible contemporary espionage electronic signals device. They are a bit closer to the Earth than satellites. They're very good at picking up electronic intelligence as well as just taking photographs. They get better photographs than satellites, which are further away. On the other hand, the Chinese must have known that the Americans would notice this thing floating across the country. It is, of course, possible that the Chinese just stuffed up here. We always think the Chinese are 12 feet tall and they never make a mistake. It's possible, the order to send this balloon was not rescinded, after the order to be nice instead of nasty came through. It's a bit odd for the Americans to let it keep gathering intelligence for that whole week, because it doesn't just put the intelligence in its pocket, it broadcasts it straight back to Beijing. And you would think surely they could have shot the thing down in some area where it was not over a populated area. But on the other hand, I'm willing to take yes for an answer from the Biden administration. It shot the thing down in the end and it cancelled Antony Blinken's visit to Beijing. I think that's a pretty good response from the Americans.
Yeah, suspended. I think he'll still go at some stage. But that's the curious thing, the timing of it, right? It was. I suspect you may be right. It was left hand, right hand, not knowing, or maybe, who knows, some Chinese army person who might not agree with the president. I find that's even possibly an interesting scenario. But listen, what do we expect now from these talks between our trade minister and theirs?
Well, look, as you know, I've been very supportive of the Albanese government on foreign policy. I think they've done very well, except for Penny Wong's really weird speech in Britain last week. But this is a bit of a moment of truth. The truth is that China's trade bans haven't hurt us much at all. They've helped us clarify our national debate, and they've forced some of our exporters to diversify their markets. We don't have to go begging to the Chinese. By all means, it's good to be sober and responsible, turn down the temperature a bit, all that sort of thing. But for example, I do not think that for a moment we should withdraw our actions in the World Trade Organization against Beijing's ridiculous discriminatory trade embargoes against Australia. Now, as you say, Andrew, Beijing is talking nice, but so far they've kept their trade embargoes on us. They've kept the Australian citizens locked up on trumped up charges, and they continue to harass all our friends militarily right throughout East Asia and Southeast Asia. So I think the Albanese government is right to try to lower the temperature and stabilise the relationship, but they must not give in on anything, and including they must not, this will be a particularly important sign, Don Farrell must not abandon our actions in the World Trade Organization just because the Chinese have stopped screaming abuse at us. And none of the underlying strategic realities have changed. They still want all strategic outcomes which are bad for Australia, and they still want to throw our ally out, the Americans, they still want to invade Taiwan and all the rest of it. So I think we should proceed very cautiously down this road of re-engagement.
Now, I'm out of time, but I just want to ask you, Lydia Thorpe quitting the Greens today. What did you make of that? How do you think it's going to affect this debate over the voice?
This is the future of the voice, Andrew. I mean, if you concentrate all national attention on race, you will make race a more vexatious matter. Now, the Albanese government will soon introduce its legislation into Parliament, and the Liberals at last face a moment of truth. Do they actually oppose this terrible measure to divide Australians by race and to entrench identity politics into the heart of national life forevermore, or do they oppose it? And it can only be defeated, I think, if the Liberals do oppose it. And if they don't oppose it, then Lydia Thorpe, sovereignty movements, treaties, truth-telling commissions, abuse, constant performative identity politics, whipping up new hatreds, that's the future under the voice.
I'm afraid I agree with every syllable of what you just said. Greg Sheridan, thank you so much for your time.